Hi, and welcome to Northland Records. My name is Bryan and today I'm going to be showing you how to replace a capacitor on your board. Now for me, I have this beautiful Harrison console TV3 that I got from Inner Ear Studios out in Washington, D.C. Amon was very a pleasure to deal with out there and getting this shipped out. This board sounds amazing. But the problem with boards as old as these, this one was made in the 1980s, probably about 1981 or 1982, is that they tend to need some work done on them from time to time. Recently I had a channel that had a blown capacitor. So the way you can usually tell if a capacitor is blown is you will usually see a little puff of smoke, or if you look at the board, you won't be able to see it here, but I'll show it to you later. There's a little bulge in the end of the capacitor, or you'll see fluid leaking out of it around the edges, and I'll show you what that looks like in a later picture. So enough talk, and let's get to it. Okay, so the first step that I usually take when I'm replacing a capacitor is to discharge it. Now, with these little ones, you can probably do it with a screwdriver, or there's another method if you look up online to do it with a resistor. But for this, a screwdriver should work just fine, and you touch the two opposing poles towards each other, and that should discharge it. In the case of a blown capacitor, there's probably not going to be any reason to discharge it, but you always want to, just in case something has happened. Now the next thing I'm going to do is that these type of capacitors are polarized, so that means that electricity should only flow from one way to the other way. There's a positive and negative side. I always like to take a picture so that I can remember exactly what the polarization was, so for my later installation. So I make sure I get plenty of light in there, and you won't be able to see it because the capacitor is right in between here, which is hard to see through the camera at this angle. And I'll take a photo of it, and there we go, got the polarization, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, for this next step, I put an extreme close-up, and I put a little piece of yellow tape in front of the 2 points that I will be unsoldering to remove this. Now some people might at this point use a little cleanup thing, but I'm just going to get the capacitor out for now. You want to make sure you have some flux on there. If you don't have flux, but you have lead solder with flux in it, you can use that, just a little dab on the end. And make sure you have a good soldering iron, because that is very critical to be able to do these types of repairs. So you don't want to burn the board, you don't want to get unsoldered out of there. In this case it looks like they bent the ends, so it's going to take me having to pull it from the other end to get it out. And you might not be able to see, but I will be pulling it from one end and soldering from the other. And it's so. Here you see, I have my capacitor that's out. If you see the end, you see how it's blown like that? You can see that the capacitor was not good anymore. And next step, to put in a new one. So here you can see that I've removed the capacitor, and if you can see the end, how it's kind of bulged out like that. Not sure how well you can see it in there, but that's a sign that this capacitor has gone bad. And it was smoking, so that also helps. Now we're going to put in the new capacitor. The new capacitor is the one on the back. In this case they use a Nichicon capacitor for the replacement. If you will look on the top, you see those two rounded rectangular bars. There's one on each of the capacitor. That signals the electricity flow. If you just make sure that the new one you put in is lined up with the same direction as the old one was, you'll be fine. And now it's time to install. So once you get your capacitor in place, in this case it took a little extra time because I had to do a little bit of cleanup on the capacitor space, just because whoever soldered this last time used way too much solder. That's one thing to be careful. Don't ever use too much solder. And it took a lot of cleanup with copper, braided copper. This stuff is indispensable when you're doing cleanup. So there you have it. The new capacitor is in place. I just soldered it in. You see it didn't take that long. And if you can see it, there she is, right there, all sitting pretty. I made sure that it was polarized the right way by testing. And now let's put it back in the board and test it out. Now it's time to put it back in the board. So first thing we want to do is make sure that our speakers are off and that things are turned down, and of course that our board is off. You don't want to insert this into a live board. Alright, so let's put her back in. Now, try whenever you're handling these to always grab by the tops. Now if you can see in the board, you'll see right here, that's where it goes into. And you can't see, but there's another one on the inside here where these things slide in to fit them in right. So make sure you slide it in carefully, and it should just drop right down into place. Alright, now let's turn our board back on. And as you can see, voila, we have working channel. Lights right up. I hope you all enjoyed this little soldering lesson. When you're soldering, make sure you take your time, make sure you're patient, because it can get very frustrating at times, and never try to force anything. You don't want to break your board or your channel, because those are very expensive to replace. And so long, see ya.